Then entrepreneurial enthusiasm, where we looked at the strong positive sentiment and inspiration for an individual, senses for entrepreneurial passion, commitment, and anticipation to achieve their goals. We also looked at the recognizing opportunities and intention to establish a business venture through an effective plan of action is significant. Then we also looked at the enthusiasm for students that can be impacted on by a digitized entrepreneurship education curriculum, in which involving businesses and institutions and other stakeholders in improving their awareness and interaction of entrepreneurial activities. They also looked at the knowledge acquisition, where the rate of unemployment is high in nations, which has brought the need for a digital EE to assist in cultivating entrepreneurial knowledge among students. Also, policy initiated for on-the-job training, to boost the knowledge capacity of entrepreneurship among students, and entrepreneurial acquaintances, which does have an impact on students' intention, which could be beneficial in the implementation of digital systems for skill development. Then we also looked at the impending features of digitized systems towards economic growth and intellectual learning transformation, and the demand for a digitized system in the transformation as an impending features for effective entrepreneurial success and development. Then the other two themes that EE is pertinent towards creating opportunities in engaging among students to become entrepreneurs and become leaders and managers with entrepreneurial skills. Then we also looked at emphasize on the improved EE to achieve a strategy in occupational procurement among students, which requires the digitized procedures towards improving students' entrepreneurial attitude and self-reliance. And let me just go to the conclusion. I don't have time anymore. And on the conclusion part, the study offered a review of digitized EE for entrepreneurial effectiveness. The study showed data search in various databases, identifying 112 publications. 43 were selected, of which quantitative was 47%, journals were 86%, and then the Asia, we also found out that Asia and China and Indonesia were the highest countries that published in this space based on the papers that we identified. And Nigeria and South Africa were only African countries, which means Nigeria and South Africa are more focused on creating entrepreneurial opportunities for our students, through our students, so that people can be self-employed than depending on white-collar jobs. In digitized EE, using AI also is very significant because it assists in improving students' entrepreneurial capacity and effectiveness in the economy. They also, digitized EE can be of great importance in building entrepreneurial knowledge among students towards becoming entrepreneurs, because becoming entrepreneurs will help reduce the rate of unemployment and improve in the economy. Also embrace engagement between institutions and businesses to create entrepreneurial role models which can instigate its effectiveness in the economy. And the digitized systems will include practical entrepreneurial expertise, which can assist in creating entrepreneurial knowledge and among students. And also, digital entrepreneurial knowledge is vital in addressing the skills acquisition in venture creation, in business, on business among students. And also, digitized will foster easy access to market information, self-employment, strategic decisions, business mindset, competitiveness, and the realization of entrepreneurial effectiveness for institutional success and entrepreneurial and economic development, and also to achieve our sustainable development goal of 2030, which is number 4 and number 9, and number 9, as I said before. Then for further studies, suggestion for further studies on empirical data and other research outputs not identified in this manuscript to have a different view of the study on digitized EE for entrepreneurial effectiveness. Thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
No, you're good. Thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel, for your presentation under the theme of human capital. If we link that to the theme of our conference, one of the key themes we reflected on being sustainable development, you would agree that human capital is right at the middle of it. We cannot be talking sustainable development and not talk about human capital. Within that frame, your paper reflected on entrepreneurial education. Yes, specifically. How do we leverage entrepreneurial education to anchor sustainable development? Yeah. What are the opportunities that digitization brings to entrepreneurial education? You know, you talk about social media entrepreneurship. I didn't know about that. We learn every day. Yeah. So that was one thing that you reflected on, but I'm sure there are many more, you know, ideas that come to mind as people listened to your presentation. So basically, within a constrained environment where many young people are either unemployed or underemployed, entrepreneurial education holds some promise. And how can we leverage that to make sure that many more are productively engaged and can contribute to sustainable development? If I understand your paper, that's a good way to summarize it. That said, I think I'd like to open the floor to see what questions or inputs that there may be for the presenter. So just indicate by show of hands. 2 hands right there, the mic is right there. So let's go, Professor Allen.
Thank you, Dr. Emmanuel. I think the general impression that we have and the one emanating from your presentation is that entrepreneurial education is important for closing gaps in employment. That said, the question posed by the chair, how do we anchor entrepreneurial education in our quest for sustainable development? And so I would say that over time, governance, politicians have acknowledged this reality. But the real problem is in planning how to use entrepreneurial knowledge to actually address the problem of unemployment, because this is also at the center of youth violence and criminality. But governance has not properly planned empowerment of young people with the knowledge and skill that they need to be able to provide employment for themselves. For example, the amnesty program in the Niger Delta, which was actually intended to take young people, militants away from the creeks, had young people training in aviation. And so they train in aviation and they don't have the aeroplanes to fly. So we see a situation where skills are provided, but the local market does not absorb young people who are trained and being expected to use the training to provide food for themselves. So what happens thereafter? So I think there's need to critique what has been done so far, because we cannot be talking about empowerment, entrepreneurship without the right knowledge system, the skill and the knowledge that actually address the unemployment problems that young people face. And again, this is where decolonizing approaches, comes in. So when
It's gonna work.
My name is Dr. Ambrose Egwim. Entrepreneurial education measured in terms of publications per countries, reflecting that Nigeria is higher than South Africa, and that Nigeria and South Africa are only African countries that appeared. So my problem is not about entrepreneurial education, or does it reflect academic exercise, academic publication by these countries? Or does it show that Nigerians and South Africans are more entrepreneurial minded? Although I know that your work took a review of literature and not actually the data on business mindedness of countries. And I still know that Nigeria might still rank high in that regard if you did, but I know you didn't take data there. But do you think your findings reflect academic exercise or practicality? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. I think we can take one more hand and then we'll give you a chance.
Yes, I align myself with the question of Dr. Egwim, and I want to ask what is the extent to which this entrepreneurial education, because I'm a member of the University of Port Harcourt here. The question is, to what extent has this entrepreneurial education, or to what extent is it contributing to sustainable development? Yes, did your research work identify that? So we want to know, so that for those of us who are in University of Port Harcourt, we can relate it with your research findings. Thank you.
Thank you. Doc, let me just throw in one last one, and then you can respond to all of this. Yes? Your focus is entrepreneurial education and digitization. Did you think about how those two interact within the context of indigenous knowledge systems? If you take the Igbo apprenticeship system, for example, a lot of that happens. Is there an opportunity to leverage that and formalize it in entrepreneurial education? Because most of it is informal, where you see the owner of the business and whoever is understudying him, So what value can digitization bring to that space? so that we can leverage indigenous knowledge, package it, amplify it, and use it for learning across the continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for the interesting questions, interesting inputs, because I believe these inputs will help me to improve my papers in the manuscript. The first question, based on the search, the countries that I identified, because when I wish I could show the thing on the screen. I have a Eastman diagram which I used to identify the papers that aligned with the study. That doesn't mean that Nigeria and South Africa are the only papers identified. There were other countries in Africa, but based on the focus of my study, South Africa and Nigeria were the countries that published papers that align with my study. That's why I had to include them in the countries of affiliation. So, secondly, the second question, which talks about the extent to which EE could contribute to sustainable development. Sustainable development goal 2030, as I mentioned in the paper, number 4 on the, yes, on strategy 4, which is which aligns with my study, which we believe, because in future, people don't have to depend on government or white-collar jobs. They have to create opportunity for themselves, which align with Sustainable Development Goals number 4. So it aligns with my study. And the final question, which a professor asked me, more studies are being conducted on how to digitize the indigenous apprenticeship. Studies are in process with that, because we are trying to find a way where we can kind of have a system in place that other countries can also adopt, because that system is very, very critical. It's very important. It's very good. It helps a lot. And plus you bring someone from nowhere and from the village, and you teach him or her how to run a business, and you settle him. It doesn't happen only in Nigeria. It happens even overseas. When we tell them that this happens in Nigeria, they're surprised, because they believe they employ you, you work for them, they pay you every month. They don't believe in settling you, opening shops for you. So that system, we are trying to find a way to digitize it so that people can now adopt it in other countries. Thank you very much.
Please. Thank you, Dr. Emmanuel, for your exciting presentation. It leaves us some ideas for reconsideration. I'm particularly excited as to how that can happen from the IKS, Indigenous Knowledge System point of view, because we're beginning to showcase who we are, the strength of our systems, and bringing them into this time by digitizing them. Yeah. So we're going to step down now from your presentation. Thank you very much. And then we'll move on to the next presentation. Okay. The next presentation is stepping out of entrepreneurship, but all stepping right back into political governance. And our presenter is Dr. Tony from the University of Science and Technology in Port Harcourt. Doctor, you're going to introduce yourself and also introduce your topic, and then take it from there. You have 10 minutes for your presentation, and thereafter we will engage with you a little bit further.
Thank you very much, my sister, Professor Ile, and welcome home. My name is Dr. Anthony Egopoeze. I'm an associate professor of politics and governance from the Rivers State University. In fact, it is not Rivers State University of Science and Technology. It is Rivers State University. I'm the acting head of Department of Political Science. The topic I'm supposed to speak on is social movement and resource control in the Niger Delta, Nigeria. a critique of civil resistance and politics of oil, social movement and resource control in the Niger Delta, Nigeria, a critique of civil resistance and politics of oil. As a way of introduction, you note clearly that oil was discovered in commercial quantity in a little town known as Oloibiri in current-day Bayelsa State of Niger Delta. In 1958, especially in February of that year, that little oil that was discovered in 1956 by Shell D. Ike was sold to the wider world. In fact, it was exported. In fact, if you take time to look at the trajectory, oil exploration has hit about 70 years in Nigeria. So for 70 years, mineral resources like oil has been exploited from the soil of Niger Delta. Now, how has the Niger Delta fared amidst this exploitation? Incidentally, I happen to have been in Oloibiri last month. That well is completely shut down. The environment of the people or the area is completely devastated. The economy of the people is stagnated. Of course, this takes us to the problematic, which is what I have come here to share my thought with you, especially politics of oil in the Niger Delta, Nigeria. Now, because of what we see or what has happened to the area known as the Niger Delta with oil exploration and exploitation, there have been several agitations by the people. So we have a whole lot of several social movements that have arisen over time. We'll start with the movement for survival of the Ogonis, MOSOP. We'll also look at MEND, Movement for the Emancipation of the Niger Delta, the Ijaw Youth Council, the Niger Delta Avengers, and several others. So all these organizations have been contesting for environmental justice, the restoration of the Niger Delta, and of course, the consistent neglect by the state of Nigeria on the goose that lays the golden egg. Focus especially between 2015 and 2025. That will be the scope of our study. Theoretically, we are going to be guided. First, we are going to be guided by one research question, one research objective, and that is very central to us. How have social movements and civil resistance shaped resource control policies in the Niger Delta between 2015 to 2025? I'm sure that by the time this paper goes full circle, we'll be addressing this objective which I've set out. So the paper is anchored on two theories. The resource curve theory and relative deprivation theory. These are the two theories that will shape the paper. For the first, of course, you know that it interrogates how dependence on oil revenue fosters corruption. Because when you take time to look at Nigeria, especially the oil industry, there is stupendous corruption. Incidentally, I consulted for a member of House of Representatives, and I did a motion for him. And of course, I looked at what NATI did, especially with the audit of the oil industry. In course of that report for the motion which I prepared, I discovered that a whole lot of corruption take place in the oil industry. But for the refineries that are currently existing, in fact, these refineries are not producing, but the staff are going for training. Over 3.something billion was spent for staff training when the people are not working. That is just a microcosm of what you see in the whole wider issues. So this theory, resource curve theory, of course, takes care of that. It looks at weak institutions and renter-seeking politics and marginalization of host communities and all that. Relative deprivation theory also will also provide a guide to us because it looks at both issues of governance failure and grave injustices that take place within the state. Now, for methodology for this in discourse, we were guided by secondary data, and we looked at government publications, reports from non-governmental organizations, Amnesty International and several others. In fact, we were guided by that because we know that if you go straight, of course, we also looked at some records from the oil and gas industries, the practitioners there. Now, the data we analyze through content analysis. For our data presentation, we are guided by this: how social movements and civil resistance have shaped resource control politics in the Niger Delta between 2015 to 2025. So how has that happened? How has the politics of oil been influenced by these principles? So for about 10 years, we took time to look at the politics of oil and resource control. Now, if you look at pre-2015 to 2025, the politics that we saw was the call for resource control. And of course, the agitations everywhere, especially by 2007, Nigeria boiled to a point where the oil production dropped to about 700 barrels per day. And that was dangerous for the country. The country melted and it was problematic for us. So, but now there is a paradigm shift from that demand of that time, because at that time, there was complete blockage. There was destruction of oil facilities. There was kidnapping of oil personnel. In the current epoch, what is the paradigm shift like? We have community litigations championed by NGOs. There is advocacy. There are strikes and protests, youth activities. Of course, there are also few sabotage by some of these community persons. At times, of course, you see the government has taken drastic actions through militarization of the environment. So if you go to almost all the communities in the Niger Delta, you see heavily armed military personnel manning the environment. But the question I've asked, have that stopped oil theft? So who are the bunkerers? That is what we're going to find out in course of our discourse. So this paper traces the main channels through which movements have influenced policy, environmental justice, and local outcome, illustrating the effect with recent empirical examples. Now, our findings show that There is sporadic monetization, mobilization of agenda setters, litigations, NGOs, and transnational advocacies. Now, if you look at the oil industry today, or the environment of Niger Deltas today, what has happened in the past? There is a paradigm shift. Paradigm shift because we can now see that a whole lot of NGOs on the environment, environmental right action, and several of them, all of them, they're advocating for environmental justice. Of course, the movement for survival of Ogonis, they also advocated for environmental justice. That led to the setting up of IPREP and several other, even presidential amnesty program, the Niger Delta Development Commission. All things were output from these demands. We also have direct actions of disruption, shaping of short-term bargaining, direct actions or litigations. Several state governments have gone to court, especially the littoral states. They've gone to court to challenge the Nigerian state, the federal government of Nigeria over mineral resources, because you cannot see divesting of the oil industry. That diversification is taking place. SPDC, IGP, and what you call Chevron, and all of them, they're leaving the onshore. They're moving into the deeper water. And of course, the deep water is controlled by the federal government, not the state government. The littoral state had to go to court to ask what is the nautical miles wherein the state, the subnational entities will have control over the mineral resources. Because when you go into the deep water, according to federal government, belongs to them. So we have that happening, currently happening now. Yeah. Okay. So now there is also the securitization of both the Niger Delta. Everywhere you see security. So, and that has posed some problems for us currently. It's part of our findings. Because I don't have much time, I will conclude by saying that between 2015 to 2025, social movement and civil resistance in the Niger Delta have remained central to the struggle for environmental justice, equitable development, and genuine resource control. Despite these protests, these movements have persistently challenged the state and corporate dominance over oil resources. And of course, if you go further, you see that there are several recommendations that I've made, and part of which have to do with institutional reforms and resource governance transparency. Institutional reforms, because the Nigerian state, especially the judiciary, has been the core problem of Nigeria in politics, in governance, and even in the oil industry. So the judicial corruption is everywhere. So we think that the judiciary should be strengthened to check for corruption and all that. Then we'll also ask for constructive state movement engagement and participatory dialogue. We think that engagement of the people is more prominent, more pertinent now than ever. So say a continuous engagement is imperative. Then environmental remediation and restorative justice. Environmental remediation, very key. What is happening in Ogoni land should be, move beyond that area. So we think that the whole Niger Delta should be remediated, not only the Ogoni land. So IPREP law, setting up the IPREP, should be restructured. So when they restructure the law, setting up the IPREP, so it will not cater for the whole Niger Delta, not only the Ogoni land. Then strengthening civil society and local governance capacity, then redefining security policy towards human security. Now, the state is more interested in the oil industry, how to protect the national assets. They're not interested in the human beings that live in the Niger Delta. So we think that human security, there should be focus also on human security. Then regional development and revenue redistribution is very key. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you. Shall we? Yeah. Thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. I guess this is at the heart of the Niger Delta. I expect that all the hands will be up. Yes, so we'll get a number of reactions. Please prepare yourself so that you can respond to them. I see already 7. Okay, let's start from this side. I see you there, my brother in the Ankara. Yes, that's the first one. Just keep your hands up. Those of you on this side, let me take 3 hands. 1, 2, Prof. Phillips. Anybody else on this side? Yeah, I just want to take all of this side first. And then I'll come to you. Gospel, number 3. Okay, number 4 is general. Number 5 is our doctor. Don't look around. Look at me. Doctor, yeah, number 5. And Prof is 6. Okay, let's take this 6 and then I'll come to that side. Is that okay? Yeah?
Prof,
All right.
thank you so much for the privilege.
You're
Thank you, Associate Professor, for that wonderful presentation. Having noted that, I want to raise an issue that is of great concern to me, particularly being somebody that grew from the Niger Delta. I'm from Bayelsa State. In previous presentation too, there has been a number of arguments concerning the issue of resource control. Now there is a growing debate that attention should be shifted. While control is important, also let us also look at the issue of management. For instance, look at, Bayelsa as an example. A state, look at the money that accrued to the state annually and on a monthly basis, and compare the level of development in Bayelsa State with other states of the Federation. Sometimes some of us, we lose the confidence to even engage some of our peers from other states. Is it the Bayelsa we've been hearing? What is in this Bayelsa that we've been hearing all this year? Nothing to drive home about. So you made mention of the constructive state movement. And sometimes this movement have been hijacked by the elite. Sometimes they make deliberate attempt to co-opt them into the elite system. So once something enters their pocket, you see that nothing comes from them again. For instance, look at the IYC Central Zone. These are movements that ought to engage, serve as civil society engagement that ought to attack the existing system, but we found out that at the end of the day, nothing comes out of that. So attention should also be shifted. Sometimes our value system, I'm scared. As a youth, I said, we keep on complaining about the leaders, but what about the youth? The value system that we take into the system, I think one of the professors, I think my professor here, Professor Noguba, also stated that. And also, let me borrow a leaf from our professor, Professor Allen, who said that we are not doing enough as scholars. Let us also do more in the area of management. Let us hold these people accountable in the area of management of resources. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Professor Phillips.
Thank you very much. Because my student talked about management, let me just briefly highlight on that before I move on. If you say that we have not been holding our people accountable, it may not be very, very correct. Because look at Nigeria. Most part, I think this part of Nigeria, our citizens are at least one set of people who have held their governors, somehow accountable. You can look at the issue of Alamese. It is the people. The people, Ibori, it was the people who instigated it. So if you say we do not want to do that, maybe perhaps about now, they are not holding them accountable. Even Peter Odili, the people of River, in fact, we have all times, we have always, provoked the idea that they must be accountable. And again, if you also say there's no development at all, if you drive out of this campus, and you move further, you will see flyovers, different things coming up. That's not to say that they are not performing. They are doing their little bit. But to say that there's nothing at all, that's the area I don't like. I know that we have only 8 local government areas in Bayelsa State. For example, today there's a road going to Tombras. and that is by the state government. Okay, and there's a road for now. You can drive to Ekeremo, but that wasn't there. That wasn't there. So to say that there is nothing going on at all is not entirely correct. That's the point I'm trying to make. Now let me go to the area I wanted to actually address. My brother, associate professor, you talked about where oil was first found, and you see the literature is actually pointing to Oloibiri. But that again is part of the type of problems that we have seen. If it were to be in some other areas, I think that it would have brought about intercommunal conflicts. But Oloibiri isn't, in fact, as I speak to you, Oloibiri doesn't have any oil well. Oloibiri itself does not have any oil well. In other words, the first oil well where oil was found is not in Oloibiri town. And it does not even have any boundary with the community where that oil was first found. And what is the name of that community? Is Otabagi. Now, I know that I carried out while I was doing my master's, my MSc work at the University of Ibadan when I was studying peace and conflict studies. I came out to do a field work, and I discovered that ordinarily I was going to Oloibiri, but then I discovered that the community does not even have a boundary with Oloibiri, and so I took part of the questionnaire to that community of Otabagi and elicited some, fresh idea from them. But do you know what happened? My supervisor, who schooled in the US in the 70s, who came to Rivers State to carry out a research work and went to even Oloibiri, also found that Oloibiri was the first where oil was first found. And we had a disagreement. He said, what am I trying to say? I said, look, sir, this was what I found. He said, I must bring all the questionnaire that I administered. Do you get the point? So the logic here is that sometimes even naming of oil wells against communities that are, for example, Agbami oil well in Bayelsa. What has Agbami got to do with Bayelsa? So these are issues that, bring about deep-seated conflicts in the Niger Delta. That's one. Then the next thing I wanted to point out, while you were presenting, you talked about the issue of Niger Deltas. Niger Deltas. I don't know. I believe that that's not what is contained. You also talk about personnels. I believe that that is not what is contained. But I just brought these ones out to say that while you are doing your final work, you have to do the editorials properly. Thank you, and God bless you.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof. Phillips. Thank you for your contribution. Can we just go straight to your questions?
Okay. First, please, thank you for the study. Thank you for your presentation. Can you please remind the topic again? It says social movement. I didn't get that completely.
Resource control in the Niger Delta, Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much.
A critique of civil resistance and politics of oil.
Okay, thank you very much. I was following your presentation and I had a few concerns, and one of these has to do with you talked about the roles Molsop, MEND, and the rest had played on this issue. And most of the people who had led the issue on this, particularly those we refer to as militants, if you are speaking from the Nigerian side, if you're speaking from the Niger Delta side, it refers to as freedom fighters. Now, can you relate the character of these people in relation to today? Because most of these people who led the call for resource control or whatsoever, they are chiefs, they are politicians, they are very wealthy. One donated 10 billion recently. And if you are careful with what's happening within this environment, you also observe that some of these people are now the people fighting against other people, rising up to make demands from the state. So how do we relate that. I hope you can capture that with your study. Then you were also talking about the communities. This is more like an advice. Basically, communities have been clamoring for attention, saying that what has been happening over time is that states, we talk about oil producing states receiving derivation and the communities are left out. And how be it small, the PIA is the only legal instrument that seems to have given community a sense of belonging. But the attention given is small. We need more. But I think maybe I've not seen the full paper, but I think the issue of the PIA should also be carried. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. Move on to General.
Right, good morning. Thank you so much, Associate Prof, for that beautiful paper. It's very rich and stimulating. My intervention is in the aspect of security, like you mentioned. You made the statement that there's the over-securitization of the Niger Delta environment. And your recommendation, you said the focus should shift to human security. I agree with you, but I just want to give some posers that I want you to respond to. I wonder if you considered the role of the military deployments in the Niger Delta is serving, and to what extent it has succeeded in engendering peace in the region. Vis-a-vis the role of TANTITA, the pipeline security contracts that TANTITA is engaging, and how all of these have contributed to buoy up the daily oil production quota in the last couple of years. So my question is, how would you want it to be? Whereas human security is very, very important, but I see compromise even among the stakeholders. Dr. Gospel told you about those people that were agitators pushing those movements in time past, who have now become so wealthy and are now working against the system. So you see the elite have taken over. You see the traditional institutions, the traditional rulers have been compromised, and the youths themselves are not helping matters. There's the entitlement mentality. Earlier, Professor Allen talked about the NDDC and their effort at empowerment programs. When they put them through those trainings and give them starter packs to go and start their businesses, they don't do that. They sell the starter packs. All they just want is handouts. Now, how do you want this kind of environment to shape what we desire for concerning the oil of politics? All right, so the other aspect that I wanted to say is the actions of the security agencies and the civilian contractors. We know that if they were not in the fray, things will have deteriorated so very much. In the Niger Delta generally now, bunkering has been minimized, especially by those from those little players in the field. I'm not talking about the big players now. So we see this advantage play out. And I thought that maybe we should have pointed towards that and acknowledged the advantage or the contributions that all of these have helped to get us to where we are now, even though we are not out of there. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, General. Let's take a contribution. Yes, Doctor.
Okay.
And then Prof. Allen, and then yourself.
Okay, I have the microphone. My name is Dr. Ambrose Egwim. I am the author of The Dynamics of Nigerian Federalism by Pegrave Macmillan, and the other article on True Federalism in Nigeria, a Political Discourse. So I have been following the issue of Niger Delta resource control, derivation, whether it should be derivation, whether it should be transferred to state or the community. And I have noticed your presentation still deals with what was in vogue between 1999 to 2015 when Dr. Goodluck Jonathan and President Yaradua tried to settle the issue of militancy as regards to resource control. But there is new thing that is happening or has happened currently to handle the issue of restiveness and the issue of community that produces oil and issues of state, which is contained in the Petroleum Industrial Act, which tried to give certain percentage of oil companies' production to the community directly. And the argument that even though this is given to the communities directly, that it could lead to more crisis. And there's another argument that even though this law has been passed since 2021, that these communities have not received what their entitlement, both from the federal government and the companies. And there's also the argument of divestment, which some people, I noticed that some scholars within this axis try to deny that there's divestment, rather they are trying to say it is a change of nomenclature of companies. But I know that the argument there is that there's divestment. The international oil companies are moving from producing from the offshore, or I don't know how you differentiate the one on inland, and they are moving up there. And why they move up there, whether they change the name of the company or not, they tend to hand over to indigenous companies that have ownership from Nigeria, even from that localities. Meaning that if this community try to do bege or crisis again, those people know how to handle them because they are also part of the communities. And this, if it starts, will eventually consume the communities. So I don't know how you concluded, or the way I didn't read the paper, you concluded with the past without actually looking at the present. PIA 2021 industrial cannot be removed from the solution or more problems to the Niger Delta oil producing communities. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ambrose. Prof. Allen, and then we'll take the gentleman here, right in front.
Yeah, Dr. Tony, thank you for your presentation. I'm wondering if it is possible for you to broaden the concept of resource control within the context of broader resource sovereignty argument, especially in relation to the current global North's interest in Africa's minerals. Some people say there's a new scramble for resources in Africa. If we look at the structure of governance, global structure of governance of natural resources, it has been very difficult for the multilateral environment to check the excesses of corporations in collaboration with national and local political elite. Very difficult. So communities have been struggling, but that has not helped much. So by framing conceptually the issue of resource control, because even resource control, resource control struggles like others have said, have been hijacked by local elites struggling to control oil money. So that has not helped, because governors who have argued, on the basis of resource control, do so because they want more money to steal. Not that they're interested in the development of communities, not at all. So they can have enough to steal and give to their cronies, take contracts and all of those. So by framing broadening the concept of resource control to connect with broader resource sovereignty arguments, it may be helpful to attract, to build or to connect with global environmental justice, movement and the issues that they frame. I'm just suggesting this because if you look at the moment, the presidency of the G20 is in Africa. I think there are so many groups and scholars who are making arguments, to support their positions, that dwell on resource sovereignty for African countries, vis-a-vis global powers that are struggling to take as much as they want in Africa. So I'm just suggesting this. It may be very helpful because we're even tired of the idea of resource control. What is it all about?
All right, thank you. I think I'm just gonna have to squeeze you in so that then he can respond to all of it at once. Yes.
Thank you, Professor. My name is Peter Weke. I'm a PhD student in this center. Listening to the associate professor, his presentation very insightful and thought-provoking. Mine is a suggestion, so to say. It would be nice, even though I've not read through your papers, it would be nice to compare what happens in other oil-producing economies, like the OPEC countries. We live in a global village right now. We're moving from knowledge economy to a technology-driven economy all over the world. What happens in Oman? What happens in Qatar? What happens in the big Saudi Arabia? How do they manage their God-given resource of oil? How is it able to benefit their population and their citizens? Why is that of Nigeria looking like a curse rather than a blessing? My thinking is that if you expand the knowledge base to that level, it could contribute to some policy reviews, and then the people of Nigeria will begin to benefit from your research. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Prof, I'm going to hand over to you. If you can just add to that your reflection, simple question, which is, I may be wrong, but my sense is that a lot of these social movements are masquerading as such. In other words, they are not really social movements. They are elitist agencies, if I can call it that. I want you to either allay my fears that that is not the case, or maybe confirm that that is indeed the case. Because from what I see, that is the simplest way I can put it. Yeah, where social movements have been hijacked for private gain. Simple. Yes. Thank you. I hand over to you. I know we gave you a lot of inputs. Respond the best you can, and the others, you can just take that into consideration for later.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Ile, and thank you very much to all that made one contribution or the other. But let me state clearly that the paper is very expansive, and if you actually have the privilege of seeing the paper, some of your fears would have been allayed because I have almost everything that you have mentioned contained in the paper. By the time I share it with you, maybe if you are in a jiffy, you'll see that the paper is quite rich and substantive enough. Let me start with your concern. Your concern is as true as mine, but the only area which I would say that something has been achieved, especially, is in the area of Ken Saro-Wiwa and others in their request for social justice in the Ogoni land. Mossop, under his watch, was very active, and I'm sure if you go through the activities of Mossop now, they are more political than a movement for the emancipation of the Ogoni people, as it were. Political crises have bedeviled their activities, and of course, you can't extricate the political crisis from economic factors, because the polity is the superstructure, while the economy and others are substructures. So, of course, they leverage on the superstructure to achieve the other divide. So your fear is still there, and I'm sure that it's as easy as that. So of course, we can't also undermine them because their activities have also helped in one way or the other. But if you look at part of my review, I told you that several social entities, ERA and all that, have environmental right action and several other organizations like that have been fighting for social justice. So it has gone beyond this other set of people to a wider spectrum of individuals and organizations beyond the locals, as it were. Now, for the question posed by Professor Allen, I want to thank you for that. Now, resource control is key, and environmental resource sovereignty is very important. For me, resource sovereignty is more akin to resource control, because at the level of the demand agitation for resource control, when you get it, what happens? And of course, I take you to section 162 of the Constitution. Section 162 of the Constitution of Nigeria talks about the distribution of Nigerian wealth, and 13% of the derivation is vested on the host communities. Incidentally, I told you that I actually consulted for a member of House of Reps, and I asked for the review. In fact, there was a bill which we sent to the House of Representatives for the review of Section 162 of the Constitution. And what were we asking of? We're saying that that section that has to do with derivation should be reviewed and revised. Because what we see currently is the money is paid straight to the states. And we're saying in that review, which we asked for, that every state should have state mineral development commissions detached from the state government itself. And by that, you see that the 13% will be managed by that body, not the state government directly, as it were. So that would have given us a better leverage to see how the minerals will be managed. Now, by the time you get the paper, you see some of the comparative analysis I did, because I looked at Saudi Arabia, especially in terms of the protection of their national assets related to the oil. In fact, in Nigeria here, you are getting JTF, you are getting all those people. Saudi Arabia does not have that. What they have is one central room, which the oil facilities are linked to. So from the confines of that room, they see what is happening to every other of their facilities, oil facilities and installation is there. So they don't have time to send security operatives to anywhere, and of course it's waste of time. And even if you go down to find out, the security operatives are part and parcel of the loot that we are seeing in the oil industry. So this that area was also captured. Now, you see today, I will beat my chest and tell you that oil thefts have reduced. And why has oil theft reduced? Because most of the companies, especially, in fact, if you go to Oando now, you know, they have employed drones. Since they have employed drones, the drones monitor their facilities, you know, and the deployment of drones have taken away some of the decent activities of even the security operatives. And that's why I've asked for more attention to be paid to human security, because that aspect of it would have also been handled if the companies have to invest strongly on security. You know, of course, that is captured in my recommendation. So the military, as far as I'm concerned, yes, you know, there's a nexus between the activities and the Tantita and all that. You know, Tantita has helped, you know, strongly, and the military too is helping. But you see, generally, the Niger Delta issue is a complex one. Very complex, because some of the activities of these characters that we see are economically motivated. And when you have a political, the set of economic buccaneers, political buccaneers and all that, what you see is what we're getting currently. Now, the character of course, these the militants, or what you call them, the Niger Delta, what do you call them? Freedom fighters. That's a new nomenclature, a baptismal name that they've earned over time. And I tell you, because I know, when somebody has fed fat from a system, it's difficult for the person to go back to struggle. And that is what is happening to them, as it were now. So we have to, I recommended strong institutional restructuring. And when we have strong institutional restructuring, that will capture the role of state institutions in the management of these resources, especially the judiciary. People that are found culpable are taken to court and they are tried and sentenced to sentence given to them. Of course, you see deterrent actions taken. I made many recommendations with respect to that. Now, yes, I'm almost ending up. The issue of Oloibiri, yes. Oloibiri is a clown. Oloibiri is a clown. Yes, Oloibiri is the clown. The first oil well you mentioned is at that Utabali. That's where the oil well is situated. In fact, but the whole area is known as Oloibiri. You know, they have about, yes, I was there. And I was there. That's why sorry, let me finish. I was there myself, because we are developing, in fact, we are in a working group today, and we want to host a conference, you know, in Oloibiri, that point where the oil well was first struck. You know, so we're there as a people, about 8 of us. We're also working with, trying to work with the Bayelsa State Government, Nigerian Content Board, and several. In fact, we had a meeting last 3 weeks, 3 weeks with Renaissance, the successors of SPDC. You know, so I know what I'm talking with respect to that. Utabali is where the oil field is, but that area, the whole clown is Oloibiri clown. Let me finish. Sorry. Now, accountability is key to governance. Accountability is key to governance. And that's why I've told you something about NATI, because NATI has been very interested in trying to entrench accountability and good governance in the oil industry. So give kudos to the activities of NATI, and ask that NATI should be given more latitude to work. Because if NATI is given the opportunity, funded very well, to independently audit the oil industry, we'll see more and we'll get more from them. Of course, the PIA, for my friend that asks of the PIA, my paper has a lot to talk about the PIA. We are recommending the amendment of the PIA already, because we are saying that the 3% given to the host community for the cluster areas in the host community, that the 3% is too small. So we are asking that it should be increased. Yeah, yes, they've given the 3% is there, and we are saying that they should be given sovereignty to manage. Local people should have more local participation in the management of that 3%. And we're also asking that more funds should be allocated, more than 3% should be added to that, because that will take care of the host communities and their right. Thank you, and God bless you.
Can we applaud him, please? Yeah. Thank you very much. We had just 2 papers, but they have been very engaging, you know. So it's not a numbers thing, it's about the quality of thoughts that have come through. We unfortunately will not be able to take another round, but please do engage with the presenters after this session if there's anything that you would like to iron out or maybe share with them. That said, can you please applaud both presenters again? Yeah. And then I would like to hand over to the program director. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, let's put our hands together for them once again. Thank you, Professor Isioma, and thank you for all of the panelists for the very engaging papers that you presented. We've come to the end of the paper presentation. At this point, before I call on Professor Allen, I want to say that conferences as this affords us the opportunity to improve on our networks. And it will be quite surprising that participants have come to this conference and they've not exchanged contacts. So I've been privileged to have the contact of some participants here, and I hope that you've also done so. You know, beyond this conference, we should open up the opportunities of collaborations where we can partner and write papers together and do some research, projects together. So at this point, I want to invite the director of Center for Politics, Professor Fidelis Allen, to come and do something that looks like a rapporteur about the conference. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Program Director, I would like to thank everyone that have been part of this conference. It's been 3 days of discussion, 3 days of rubbing minds, 3 days of listening and contributing to the discussions, 3 days of sitting in sessions with chairs, guiding the discussions. And I would say that it's been wonderful, and I know you agree with me. For those online, I would also say that I believe strongly you have enjoyed the sessions. So at this point, let me, before I go to the communique, what the committee for producing the communique has done, let me quickly say that this conference aimed at exploring how politics and governance could engender development in Africa from the perspectives of academics, researchers, political office holders, citizens, and the civil society at a time that the continent faces diverse challenges from within and outside. The intersection of politics, resource governance, and development in Africa leads us to the question of how politics and governance can become more responsive to the development needs of people in Africa. What is the role of academics, researchers, political office holders, citizens, and the civil society in all of this, especially in an age when the interest of the global north in Africa's minerals has risen within the debate for a just energy transition. Between political office holders and aspirants to political offices and citizens, what really matters for a change in the way politics and governance have been conducted in Africa? What does it mean to decolonize politics and governance in Africa in the face of troubling economic, political, environmental, social, and conflict dynamics at the national and international fronts? The gender component of the debate on sustainable development in Africa raises a number of questions around gender violence, women's rights, and growing concern about femicide in Nigeria and other parts of Africa. The fact that oil and gas will continue to be at the center of policy efforts of governments across African countries endowed with these resources, perhaps longer than expected, means that corporations, oil importing and exporting countries, communities, elite, and citizens must be interested in asking and addressing questions related to the protection of the environment, transparency, accountability, and how well people live in the face of pollution, health inconveniences, climate change, climate policy, corruption, human security, and political succession. The intersection of politics, governance, and natural resource conflict is fundamental to our understanding of the growing erosion of values that previously characterized peaceful communities in Africa, especially in Nigeria's Niger Delta, where criminal violence and cultism have been on the rise. The security threat posed by armed cult groups to peace and destinies of communities is complicated by their being easy praise to politicians and local business elites in search of power and domination, especially during annual general elections. The militarization of the oil industry through violent activities of armed security is another dimension to the mental health of many who wish for environmental peace-building processes that deliver better outcomes and not the stories of death of young people now involved in the vandalization of oil pipelines. Incidentally, this has reduced in recent times. After all, crime is to a large extent a product of society which needs to be addressed or tackled holistically from a human security perspective. The keynote speaker at the conference, Professor Zondi, and the Right Honorable Speaker of the River State House of Assembly, Mr. Martin Amaewhule, separately alluded to the role of scholars in making educational and legislative institutions in Africa responsive to the imperative of the decolonial term. What we teach as professors to our students matters. The colonial root of the current curricula and the methods for conveying content to students deserve changes derived from the Africa's development reality. Amaewhule described the legislature in Nigeria as an endangered political institution, and appealed to university teachers and professors to help, while speaking on the role of the River State House of Assembly as a force for development of the state. The question arises, what is the role of the university in the development of Africa? Ladies and gentlemen, so many questions may be hitting our minds. And on the basis of these questions, basis of the discussions we have had, the communique committee of this conference has come up with a draft for you to deliberate on and make further suggestions on what can be given to the public as policy statements. So permit me to read what is here. Communique issued at the end of the International Conference on Advancing Politics and Governance in Africa, held at the University of Port Harcourt Center for Politics, Port Harcourt, Nigeria, from 21st to 23rd October 2025. Preamble. The Conference on Advancing Politics and Governance in Africa was organized by the Center for Politics at the University of Port Harcourt with the theme Politics, Resource Governance, and Sustainable Development in Africa from 21st to 23rd October 2025. The conference aimed at exploring how resource politics and governance can advance development from the perspectives of academics, researchers, political office holders, civil society, community, citizens, and industry corporate leaders. The conference, which adopted a hybrid mode of participation, drew authors and participants from Nigeria, the United States of America, Abu Dhabi, Canada, Australia, Ghana, South Africa, and Switzerland. Objective / focus areas. The conference aimed at examining the intersection of advancement of resource politics and governance for the sustainable development of Africa. 2, explore citizen-responsive, innovative approaches to resource politics and governance in Africa. 3, strengthen partnership between academics and policymakers in peace and development of Africa. Finally, interrogate ways of decolonizing politics and governance across sectors in Africa. Over the 3 days, participants discussed the need to decolonize education, politics, governance, and policy. Key resolutions and recommendations. Participants resolved as follows. 1, governments and political office holders across Africa should prioritize the needs of citizens in resource politics and governance. 2, African countries should respond to the impact of United States economic interests as espoused in its foreign policy towards Africa under the Donald Trump administration with innovation and interest of the continent at the center. 3, government at the local, state, and federal levels in Nigeria should consider urgent response with specific laws to tackle growing incidents of femicide to complement existing laws aimed at protecting the rights of women and girls. 4, governments in Africa should introduce and strengthen policy framework for the use of indigenous knowledge systems in solving social challenges such as climate change impacts and dispute resolution. 5, resource sovereignty in Africa is a crucial aspect of the current scramble for minerals by the global north that needs to be systematically pursued by governments in the continent as a matter of development through homegrown industrialization and added value chain. 6, governments across Africa should strengthen their relationships with universities through funded, regular, policy-oriented analysis, research, and engagement for the development of the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a draft for your attention and final agreement on what ought to go out to the policy community. So, responses from you? Yeah. Anybody? Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. While I agree with what had been read, I want to also appeal that the issue of the Niger Delta communities be considered as regards to the present issue of divestment that's been taken on, that we should also include in the communique that whether the international oil companies divest from onshore or not, they should pay for their crimes with regards to the polluted environment and the destruction of the livelihoods of indigenous people of the Niger Delta. Thank you.
Great. Is this something that we all consent to? The regulators and the relevant regulators in Nigeria should take seriously the issue of fixing the damage done to the environment by oil corporations divesting their oil facilities. Is that something we need to include? Oh, great. Okay. All right. Any other comment? Yes.
I would have suggested that government should not neglect the impact of climate policies that might have effect on revenue that is coming from the resource space. That's need for what they call expansion of sources of revenue beyond oil. Thank you.
Right. But I think we need to properly articulate the issue of use of local knowledge in tackling climate change. I think that message was clearly passed across during the discussions. Am I correct? Okay. So outside that, I think we have enough now. We have 8 points. I think, in my view, we should leave it at this. I think we've captured the key issues from the different sessions. So this will be passed to the policy community as something emerging from this conference. So at this point, may I invite Professor Isioma Ile to come do the final things before we leave here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you, Director, for the opportunity. I think my brief is very simple this morning, yeah? As guided by yourselves, okay? I'll just make a few remarks first. We envisioned this sometime last year about this time. But things moved quite rapidly thereafter. Just says the tenacity that is required to translate vision, even in a resource-scarce environment, you know, that a lot is possible, a lot can be done, yeah. And so it's good to be at this other end, that is on the 3rd day of the conference, when we can say, actually, that happened, that conference happened. Yeah, and its international nature was without a doubt impressive for an inaugural conference. You would know that while we have been here, we've had virtual sessions the whole time. We've had in person, like here, but we also have had the virtual sessions. And each of those virtual sessions have been rotated, if you like, virtually in different parts of the world. So you had instances where the chair was in Abu Dhabi. In other instances, the chair was in Geneva. In other instances, the chair was in Canada. In other instances, the chair was in South Africa. And, you know, so it's really been international in its outlook in the truest form of the word. Yeah, I would like to specifically, before I forget, to thank all the chairs that contributed, especially to the virtual sessions that made it happen. I would name a few from our program. We had Dr. Omololu, who was our chair from Durban University of Technology in South Africa. And we also had Dr. Tunde Abioro, who is from the McMaster University in Hamilton in Canada. Recall that some of these times are a bit odd for them because while it's daytime, some of them have to wake up at night to be able to do their virtual sessions. So we cannot take their contribution for granted. We also had Professor Opuari from the University of the Western Cape, and we had Dr. Ovier from the University in Geneva, who was part of the session on oil and development. We also had Dr. Makiva from the University of from the School of Government in South Africa, and we had Dr. Okobi Ekpo, who is from the Khalifa University, Abu Dhabi in the UAE. Additionally, we also had Dr. Evans Boadu, who is from the University of Environmental and Sustainable Development from Ghana, as well as Dr. Ilori, who is in Ottawa, Canada. Yeah. And lastly, we had Professor Iwu, also who is in Cape Town, South Africa, and Dr. Christy Kapo Abidemi, who is at the University of Mpumalanga in South Africa. Now, that does not mean that our in-person chairs were not appreciated. So I'm also just going to name them and also thank them. We had Professor Kiali, who has been part of the team ever since. We appreciate you. We had Professor Ogali. I'm not sure if he was here. Did he join us? He did. Professor Ogali, we would like to say thank you. There's Professor Priye Inokoba, who's been with us. There's Professor Emmanuel Wona. Was he here? Okay, all right. And then we also had Professor Phillips, who was with us the whole time. Thank you very much. And I'm not sure if I missed any other chair who helped us with some of those sessions, but if I did, please pardon me. We really do appreciate your participation in our program. Yeah. So the idea is to have this to be an annual conference. This is the inaugural one. And so this is history making for us to have been part of this. We want to look back many years from now, 50 years from now, and say, oh, that conference is still going on. Yeah, we were there at the first session. Yeah, so please, I would like to invite all of you present here and online to remain committed to this baby that we have to nurture. It's going to be year-long annually. We will look at the opportunity or the possibility of rotating it, in which case we may go to other countries where we get collaborators. But I have to say that our dreams are big with regard to this conference. Yes. And so we invite you to encourage your institutions to partner with us, various universities. Next time, we want to see on our program different institutions that have collaborated. And of course, when it is shared and collaborated, the investment does not have to be so much on one host. Yeah, because people will take care of different things and together we'll make it even bigger. Yeah. So next time we're looking for more participation from from many more countries, as well as increase in the numbers of delegates. Yeah. The publication we will look at, we already have a professor leading that activity. Your papers, if you could just rework them, take the inputs into consideration and resubmit, because then it is going to go through the mill, you know, the peer review process. It's going to be blind peer review. So your reviewers will not know who is writing that paper. We want to make sure that it is fair game for everybody. Yeah. So we'll depersonalize the papers, remove the name, remove the institutions, and then we'll send it out for peer review. If for any reason your paper is not accepted, please don't take it personal on Professor Allen or myself. Yeah. Because it will be purely blind review. But I'm sure that a lot of those papers will make publication. Yeah. The communique has been shared, and I'm glad that it got support in that regard. And so our next course of business is now to share our certificates of participation. We would like to invite you to step up. The reason we want to do that is that we'd like to take a few photos. We have a functional web page. I don't know if you saw the web page right at the back of the program. It's www.cfpuniport.org, Center for Politics Uniport.org. We take pride in this web page. And so we want to be able to share with the world some of the pictures that we have taken here. Yeah. So if you don't mind, we would request you to just step up as your name is called and then take a picture with us, because we'd like to have some of those on our web pages. Can I invite Professor Allen to come right back here, please, to join me? Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Nsiegbe Graham. Please, if you hear your name, you're here, please just step up. Onya Reason, Joseph Jackson Boba, Phillips Okolo. Please, we will need to rescript this certificate. Yes. Yes. But he can just snap. Okay, sir. Okay. Juliana Obe. Juliana Obe, please. Yes, sir. Oh, correct. Chinedu Eti. Ezikaki Olive. Two of you, yeah. 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 Temi Tobe Oluwaseun, not here. Samson Adediba, not here. Akindoyin Dare Isaac, not here. Banigo Dennis. Alali Raphael George, has he gone? Christiana Capo. Okene Nelson. Dr. Big Alabo Adokie. Samuel Calabo. Dr. Samuel Calabo. Sorry, I won't be calling your titles. Priye Inokoba, please. I'm just calling it the way it is on the certificate. Johnson Alalibo. Okay, you've collected, right? Sorry. Okay. Ellen Andrew Patterson. Emmanuel Idemudia. Okay. Yes. Victoria Abike. Taiwo Olaiya. Felix Uyabara. Felix Uyabara. Yeah, please, if you want to pick up for somebody, please, you can come up and... Good news, Osa. Good news. Williams Winnie Cheta. Williams Winnie Cheta. Felix Uyabara, please give him. No, he will give to you. Williams Winnie Cheta, Felix Uyabara.
But you see, why don't you come for when you take your own, you take the two at once. Just hang around. You take the two.
Obina Oba, Ekwi John Adebeson. Winnie Cheta, please. Give it to her. Okay. Peace Jiboko. I'm not sure Peace Jiboko is here. Joseph Jiboko is not here. Neka Barina Johnson. Dr. Gospel Lebari. You go take. John Bosco Alice. Is John Bosco Alice here? Eugene Beyoyi. Okay. Henry Ayamasowe. Okay. General. Ogo Kingsley. Ogo Kingsley. Harold Inesaziba. If I didn't kill the pronunciation. Nsirim Elizabeth. Nsirim Elizabeth. Obafemi not here. Mark Opuko Amakwa. Is Mark here? Ambrose Egwim. Jande Jacob Tehimba. Tife Samuel. Huh? Somebody speaking up for him. Yeah, Tife. Omololu Fambwedebo. Boba, have you collected? Yes. Oluwayomi Yusuf. Oluwayomi Yusuf. Egwim has not collected though. Have you collected? Give him for Tiffany now. It doesn't need a photograph. Just give him for Tiffany. Emmanuel Udekwe. Okay, please give. Yes. Prince Eze. Chimaroke Mba. Honorable Ferguson. Abdul Malik Olalekon. Is there anybody who is yet to hear his or her name? What's your name? We'll script that. What's your name? Huh? Is it not Felix? What's your name? Okay, please we will script and we'll send a certificate across. Felix Uyambara? Yes, take 4. Sorry, no, please, sir. We had already, sorry, we'll print and send to you, please. Send it, Professor Phillips, we'll send across to you too. Okay, please. Oh, yeah, come. So that you just, please, for those who registered immediately, we will get your information and we'll script your certificate and we'll send it across to you. Now, let me snap my own.
Okay, you may have your attention. Immediately we're done with this, we'll be going to the lunch out the lobby out there where we've been having lunch. We'll be having lunch or breakfast, whatever it will be, but we won't let you go hungry. So please do well to eat something before you leave. We appreciate. And joining masses. We're glad seeing our friends from Babcock, from several universities outside, friends from NDU, University of Africa, joining masses. We'll continue to communicate, and hopefully from this conference, we'll see networks that out great papers in the best of journals. Thank you very much. And thank you, Prof, for the privilege to serve.
Okay, please, let's just be on our feet as we take the closing prayer, please. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you. We give you praise for your grace that has been enabled all through these 3 days of the conference. We thank you for the success that you've granted us. We thank you for the clement weather you've given to us. We thank you for the protection. We thank you for everyone who has traveled down to this place. We thank you because that same God who has brought them here will lead them back to their respective destinations in the name of Jesus. Father, we thank you and we open up the channels of the subsequent conferences and we declare that greater things are ahead in the name of Jesus. Thank you, gracious Father. Take all the glory and let your name be praised forever in the name of Jesus. Amen.